So, yesterday I sat down and played about 6.5 hours of No Man's Sky Next. Played it both on the Xbox One X, where of course No Man's Sky has come to Microsoft's home console for the very first time, and I played it over on PC, both in solo and in 4-player co-op. Today I want to bring you guys my thoughts as someone who's been playing No Man's Sky since launch and who has experienced every single one of the free updates Hello Games has delivered along the way. If you are someone who maybe played the game a little bit at launch, who stayed away from it, who returned it, this video is in part for you to help you, I guess, get an idea as to what No Man's Sky is today, how it's changed, and the type of experience you can expect. And it's also just me talking about a game that I've really enjoyed despite its massive flaws since launch 2 years ago. I want to give a massive just kudos to Hello Games first and foremost, because they could have just kind of walked away from this project and said, wow, that was unfortunate, you know, we team up with Sony, the game obviously gets pushed out way too early, we didn't get to do all the things we said we were going to do, and now we're in kind of a bad position here. A whole lot of bad stuff went on, right? And I'm not going to sit here and just call people liars, because I don't think that's at all how the project actually went down, regardless of there being some lies. I think there's a lot more to a creative endeavor like this when you're a small team who doesn't really understand what they got themselves into, and then before you can even realize is in too deep in a lot of bad ways. They could have taken the money, because the game still sold incredibly well from that initial hype, and just walked away with it. They could have just dealt with the death threats and all of the harassing and just went dark and stopped making video games forever. But that's not who Sean Murray and his team are. They are game developers and creators at heart, and they just got back to it. They buried their heads in the sand, and they started toiling away, making No Man's Sky the game they always wanted it to be and the game they knew it could be. They've done that over the last 2 years with a free update like every 6 or 7 months it's been. There's been a bunch of free updates, expanding the content, adding new story to the game, expanding the storytelling, expanding the experience. And now Next is all of that sort of coming full circle to let them start to push No Man's Sky in a new direction, because this is still a game they want to continue to grow. They have more ideas for it. We have not seen the end of updates for No Man's Sky, but Next acts as a stepping stone for the next leg of Hello Games' adventure with No Man's Sky. So, the thing about Next is that it is really an overhaul of No Man's Sky, if not anything else. Yes, there's a lot of new content, there's a lot of new systems added to the experience, but Next is riding on all of the work that Hello Games has done over the last 2 years. The base building, again, the new storytelling stuff, the improvements to the procedural generation, even improving the procedural generation once again with Next, adding clouds, adding ring planets, you know, stepping up the visual styling of the game. It is simultaneously new content and a massive overhaul. And I think that overhaul and the way it digs into all of the details that were once No Man's Sky is where the game really does get better. I mean, this is still a survival sandbox. Like, if you don't like survival style sandbox games, you're not going to like No Man's Sky. I want to stress that you can now play it in a multitude of ways, with traditional survival, more hardcore survival, permadeath, and they even have creative. If you just want to go out and build to your heart's content and explore the entire universe at your own will, you can do that. You can play the game in a variety of ways, but it is still that style of game. Think Starbound, think Minecraft, Terraria. It falls in line with those games on a huge 3D scale. But it has a lot of these hardcore, almost space sim systems baked into it. It has bits and pieces of Elite Dangerous, the trading, being able to take one individual element, maybe you harvest something from one galaxy and sell it for a higher price in another galaxy. You know, there's a lot of these really great sci-fi systems, but again, it all comes back to it still being at its core the survival game, where you have to manage resources, you have to deal with deadly planets. If you don't like that kind of a game, you're not going to like Next. You know, it hasn't turned No Man's Sky into a single player or co-op curated sci-fi experience. It's just not that game. It has added bits and pieces of the things you might find in those games, like a more fleshed out story for Atlas and for Awakenings, that definitely give you a path to follow that I think is far more enjoyable than it was at launch if you're into that thing, but you are still in a big old sandbox game. So just keep that in mind. Now, when we talk about those core systems, I think it's important that we talk about sort of the economy of the game. So all of the resources you'll mine and collect on the surfaces of these planets or in space have all been reworked. Previously, before Next, that was honestly my least favorite part of the game. It's not that I didn't enjoy mining or collecting or crafting, it was that none of it felt structured in any way that really made sense. And having to like farm for Thanium, which is this annoyingly rare resource, or craft materials out of that same resource to gain access to more juice for my thrusters for takeoff, for example, felt redundant. It felt frustrating. And there were plenty of times where I was stuck on a planet with no clear way as to how I was going to get off other than to walk, a million minutes. All of that has been restructured with the new economy system, the new resource system. So things just make more sense. Low tier resources are common. They're on every single planet. Ferrite is all over the place. You can use ferrite to make booster cells for your thrust launchers for your ship. So you're never really in a position where you're stranded and unable to take off. You just got to collect a few materials, smack them together in some crafting situations, and bada boom, bada bing, you're good to go. Tritium is now much more abundant as a new resource inside of asteroids for your pulse drive. So again, you're never really stranded out in space. Asteroids are more common. There's ring planets with massive asteroid belts around them. The structure is just so much better there. It feels like there's more purpose, like there's more of a clear progression loop. And then you have the advanced crafting systems, bringing in the refiner, bringing in the blueprint analyzer, and just everything feels like it has a clear and designated purpose in your path to building the things you want to build, to improving your gear the way you want to improve it. And then once you get off planet, you can go up to the new space stations, which are now fleshed out with the new mission guilds that have been added recently. You've got a whole system for acquiring nanite as a high-end resource to buy new blueprints, to upgrade your equipment even further. It just all makes more sense now. That's the best way I can put it, is that for the first time, the game feels like it has real structure. To put it as many people have said, it feels like a proper game now. And I completely agree with that, because previously it felt like this big sandbox with a lot of good ideas. But those ideas didn't feel like they connected to one another. They didn't feel like there was a clear, concise progression path. Regardless of how you decided to progress, it just felt all over the place, right? It felt like you were constantly wandering to gain access to the things you needed, even if you were someone who would put hundreds of hours in the game. Now you feel like there's a clear path to how you can be rewarded. It's still player driven. You can still choose that path and say, I want to do just pure discovery. I'm going to go out and just scan everything I can. You can get a lot of currency from that. Or I'm going to focus on mining early on to get a new ship. Then I'll focus on combat later on. I want to eventually get a big freighter for my crew to deal with. We're going to maybe get this far into Awakenings and Atlas. And once we find a good planet, we're going to settle down and make a really expansive base here. Bases, by the way, can now be built anywhere, and there's no limit on how big you can make them. There's just if you really want to dive into the patch notes, you should, because there's more systems than I care to name in this video. But I just want to stress that those systems are a big part of what revamps the No Man's Sky experience and makes it so enjoyable. As someone who has played since launch, this is the first time since launch that I really want to sink my teeth into long-term progression in No Man's Sky. Last night when I got off with my friends playing co-op on Xbox, I just wanted to keep playing. I wanted to get my next ship. I'm still on that starter ship. I wanted to get a better ship. I'm kind of sitting in the spaceport with my mill. Man, is somebody going to show up? I got a mill here. My ship's worth about 150k credits, so just the right ship's got to show up. Maybe I can make the buy here. It's just, I didn't want to put it down. It's fun. It's always been a pretty fun game. But I think the more incredible part of No Man's Sky, which is that procedural generation, exploring that universe, and truly feeling like you can get lost, that was all kind of buried. You couldn't really enjoy that because the core systems were frustrating. They weren't, again, as well defined as they are with Next. So I guess that's the biggest takeaway with Next for me. And if you're someone who played at launch and liked a lot of the ideas No Man's Sky had, who liked the beauty of the game and the sense of discovery, you can come back and now really enjoy that. And with the improvements to procedural generation, it just all feels a bit more special. This feels like that sci-fi epic that is paying respects to Asimov and to Kubrick. It just feels like it's finally coming together. And that makes me really happy because I've always wanted to love this game. I've always wanted to sit down and play it for hundreds and hundreds of hours like I did at launch, but I've wanted to actually do that by indulging in all of the game's systems. I enjoyed No Man's Sky at launch because I just liked flying around taking pictures, so I would just jump from system to system finding new planets. And it was kind of hard because you'd have to jump 10, 15 systems before you started to see a little bit more variation. But now, thanks to the improvements in procedural generation, you're getting a lot more of that variation in between system, in between planet even. I got to see my very first completely barren planet as well as my first like almost 99% oceanic planet. And like it was fun to be able to do that again and have it feel special. Not just because those planets actually felt unique when compared to planets like them I'd found previously, which was special, but again, because I know that I can come to this planet and be like, wow, there's really nothing here except some condensed carbon. I'm going to mine this, take a few pictures, and then I'm going to go back to doing what I'm going to do. You know, it didn't feel like the journey had kind of come to another end there, because I knew I could go back to the core experience and I could enjoy that core experience because I like the way it's established now. Next is a fantastic step forward for a game that I always felt had tremendous potential. It almost feels, for me anyway, like No Man's Sky was always right there. It was always on the brink of being something that people could really love for this genre of game anyway. It was always on the brink of being a really special sci-fi experience. And it just needed to pull itself together. And that, without a doubt, was no easy task. But considering that they just kind of toiled away and did it in the dark, I guess it feels like it kind of happened in the blink of an eye. Like, oh, 2 years went by and boom, look what Hello Games has done. At this point, with the current price point of the game, it is $49.99 on Xbox. It's on sale for, I think, $30 over on PC right now. Not entirely sure what the PlayStation 4 price is. This is a game that I think is absolutely worth picking up if you're into this style of experience. And more importantly, if you got some friends to play it with, because as we know, friends are, in times like this, force multipliers for the fun factor. And playing with friends, you know, seeing one of my friends in a different system even while we're kind of doing something else in the next system, seeing one of my friends on one planet building their base while I'm off collecting copper for our base. It's like, my friend put it this way. She said, this reminds me so much of the fun I had with Starbound, just taken to 11. And I could not agree more, because I loved Starbound in co-op. I loved that experience. This feels like that sci-fi experience just taken up a notch, right? All those things you loved about that style of experience, but in a full 3D world with beautiful procedural generation, ridiculous pineapple-shaped creatures, and a beautiful classic sci-fi vibe. If you've been playing Next, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd also love to hear whether or not you're someone who's played No Man's Sky at launch. Are you diving back into the Next? Is this your first time playing No Man's Sky? Let me know where you're coming from as the player. Drop your thoughts and feelings and all that goodness down in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
You have been brought here for a purpose. The most important